hot.
You can just say something. Yeah, even at the whatever. Pastor Sarah summarized me for asking. I want you to blame it on. No. Then it's like, oh, it's not like
Not that I don't want it to go well, because I do want it to go well, because I always want everything I do to go well. But the president has been set
I know.
in this
I know.
I'm kind of thankful there's a lot of mistakes. I hope I don't.
We're loud. We're live. Test. Test. They're good. Awesome. Do you want me to sing something? What's the loudest one? I don't know what he's doing right now.
Nothing? Quitting?
Okay. Let's sing the first one. If you could start me in for. Did you ever know? Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything I'd like to be. I can fly higher than an eagle. For you are the wind beneath my wings.
Did you want to do that one twice?
So where do you want me to be?
Did you want to do that one twice,
Go
too?
ahead. Yeah, we're just doing the sound check.
I know, I'm just checking.
Yes, I say
Everything twice.
Everything except for the Hollywood chorus.
You could be right behind me. You could be right behind me, hitting me on the back of the head.
Oh, you want me to be right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And you should be able to see the lyrics up there. I'm gonna go check on that right now.
Oh, that would be really nice.
So you should be able to see it. So that's why I'm gonna go.
Yeah, go check. That'd be great. Okay. All right. Can we do Everything is Awesome?
Sure.
Because I guess, like, I only know it when the Lego movie is playing and not so much when I don't.
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome when you're living on a dream. Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome. You're living on a dream.
That's good, right?
Yeah, great.
Cool. All right. And then Smoke on the Water is the only other one that we didn't do.
Smoke on the water and fire in the sky. Smoke on the water. Oh, when people hear that, they know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
We've just given it all away.
Is he gonna put my keyboard through the system?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm
One little sign that shows me that you know what you're doing is that you've flattened it out.
I want them to see my face, Lee.
No, I didn't, but that's not even it. It keeps you from sliding off.
that's
Keeps
true,
curl
too.
cheeks from
Yeah.
sliding off. One of the ways, anyway. Don't do that.
It wasn't mine because mine's off.
Is he gonna put the keyboard through the system? Do you know?
Hello.
You're in front of the microphone, so if you step over here, it won't do that.
It's pointing to the speaker.
Right,
You
I know,
can't-
that's what I'm saying.
You can't do that.
Come over here.
You can't do that.
Is he gonna put this keyboard through the system or not? I have no idea. Okay, 'cause I'm just sitting back there waiting for him. And I don't know what's going on.
I'm going to say that every time anybody asks me anything. I don't have any idea. I just don't.
Yep.
Because that's usually the truth.
I think I know even less.
Well, the older you get, the less you know, and that's a good thing. Because the more you want to know, the more you learn.
Yeah,
If you're
that's true.
If you're healthy anyway.
Yeah. I get my go from? Do you know?
Okay, what? Oh,
My-
they'll introduce.
Okay.
I can only hope.
Well, I think I'm introducing myself.
I guess when you get the fickle finger pointing at you, then we'll go.
No, I'm actually the intern at Emmanuel Church in La Habra, but he is a member, right? You're a member of St. Andrew?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
You have to be like this. The first and the last are the most important. So the first is, did you ever know? Okay, that's hard.
I have the red. Okay, I turned it off. Right now it's off. That one.
Yeah, I think it'll ring the cowbell and everything.
I know.
The bishop has to show it.
Are we clanging the cowbell?
I don't know.
You should.
Check, check, check. 1, 2.
You would.
You want a cowbell? Oh, and you should have a speaker now.
Okay, Darren, are you gonna put this through the system or not? I'm sitting here waiting for you.
I'm sorry?
Are you gonna put the keyboard through the system or not?
No. So it'll be strictly to the monitor and
Okay.
so you can give it a little sound.
I don't play this, so I'm not gonna be the one playing this.
Okay.
So that's why I'm here waiting for you to tell me what.
Why don't you play a little bit for me?
I'm not a keyboardist.
There it is. There it is. Are you nervous?
A little. But a little nervous are good, right?
They say if you have butterflies, just get them in a pointy. I get nervous more with 6 or 8 people than I do with 10,000 people.
That's true. Me too, actually.
Shane Freiberg. Hi, Shane.
I like singing, performing with Young Americans. It was fine because like you practiced forever. You had like everything was all set up, like nothing could go wrong, right?
But
then you get to like church and you're singing in front of like the people who taught you Sunday school,
Right.
and I'm like,
Right. And you haven't practiced and practiced and practiced either. That's
right.
If you're totally prepared, yeah, that certainly has a lot to do with your confidence.
Oh my gosh.
Like right now, I'm not prepared at all, and you aren't either. So it's just good.
Yeah.
But there's a part of Christianity and spirituality that says people will hear what they want to hear. And people will hear what they need to hear.
Yeah.
I know performances. I know in my brain that I hit the wrong note, and yet I listen to a recording and it's the right note. So I truly know that God helps them to see,
Yeah.
helps them to hear what they
And
need to hear.
the thing is it's a sing along, so it's
Right.
not about how good I am. It's
Right.
about like let's all do this together.
Right.
Sorry.
It would be really cool if we got a.
I just need someone to tell me when to start, and I'll start. If you want to introduce, you can. Yeah, why don't you tell them that she wrote this and then invited us to do it?
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Turn it on.
Welcome back. We are about to start our afternoon session. We are going to begin with a Bible study written by Pastor Sarah Sumner Eisenbraun of St. Andrews. And it's a little different kind of Bible study. I'm going to turn things over to Maria Markham, who is an intern at Emmanuel in La Habra.
Thank you, Bishop. So, like he said, my name is Vicar Maria Markman, and I am serving right now at Emmanuel Lutheran Church in La Habra, California. I attend Luther Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. Woo-hoo! And I'm going to return there in August for my final year of classes before, call and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Here, back to Pacifica. I'd love to come back. The Minnesota girl in California. It's really nice. The weather is better here, believe it or not. So this afternoon, we are going to journey together through a familiar Bible story with a little bit of a different twist. Here's how this is going to work. I am going to guide you through the story of the first Pentecost, and at certain points, there are going to be lyrics to familiar songs up on the screen. And so together, we are going to sing along to the story of Pentecost. Lee here is a member at St. Andrew in San Diego, and he is going to lead us as we sing our way through the Pentecost story. So don't be shy. I don't want to be the only one who's singing up here. It's about doing this together, so join in and sing along. And without further ado, I welcome you to the first ever Synod Assembly Pentecost Story Sing-Along.
Thanks.
Our story begins in the book of Acts. According to the text, when the day of Pentecost had come, the disciples were all together in one place. And suddenly, from heaven there came a sound like a rush of violent wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting. The wind was the presence of the Holy Spirit, and the disciples were so inspired and so overwhelmed by this holy wind that they turned to each other and proclaimed something like this. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything I would like to be. Sing it out. I can fly higher than an eagle. For you are the wind beneath my wings. Very good. Let's do it one more time. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything I would like to be. I can fly higher than an eagle. For you are the wind beneath my wings. You guys sound really great. Thanks for joining in. The scriptures continue. They go on to say that divided tongues as of fire appeared among them, and a tongue rested on each of them. Now I'm guessing that this must have been pretty confusing. I'm wondering if once they saw these strange and burning tongues of fire, that there's a pretty good chance they wondered where this fire came from. I'm sure that they were turning around and looking at each other and saying,
We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world was turning. We didn't start the fire. No, we didn't light it, so we tried to fight it. No, we didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world was turning. We didn't start the fire. No, we didn't light it, so we tried to fight it.
That answer must have sufficed because the book of Acts says that all of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other languages as the Spirit gave them ability. I don't know about you, but I'm thinking that that must have been a pretty crazy experience to just all of a sudden be able to communicate in another language. Now we must remember that there were devout Jews from every nation under heaven living in Jerusalem, which means that even though they all shared the same faith, they spoke a lot of different languages. So I'm sure that the disciples were praying a lot about how to use this unusual gift. In fact, one of their prayers was recorded and handed down, and I'm pretty sure it went something like this.
I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood. I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood.
And at this sound, the crowd gathered and was bewildered because each one heard them speaking in the native language of each. Amazed and astonished, they asked, "Are not all these who are speaking Galileans? And how is it that we hear, each of us, in our own native language? This is so amazing." In fact,
everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome. You're living on a dream. Everything is awesome. I don't know.
when you're part of a team, everything is awesome. When you're living on a dream. Parthians, Medes, Elamites, and the residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt, and other parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes and Cretans and Arabs, in our own languages, we hear them speaking about God's deeds of power. God does sound pretty awesome. And all were amazed and perplexed, saying to one another, "What does this mean?" But others sneered and said, "Clearly, they have been drinking some
Red wine goes to my head, makes me forget that I still need her so. Red wine goes to my head, make me forget that I still need her so. My red wine.
But Peter, standing with the 11, raised his voice and addressed them. "Men of Judea and all who live in Jerusalem, let this be known to you, and listen to what I say. Indeed, these are not drunk as you suppose, for it is only 9 o'clock in the morning. No, this is what was spoken through the prophet Joel. In the last days it will be, God declares, that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and all your sons and daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Even upon my slaves, both men and women. In those days I will pour out my spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show portents in the heavens above and signs on the earth below." There's going to be
fire in the sky.
Smoke on the water. Smoke on the water.
And fire in the sky.
Smoke on the water. Before the coming of the Lord's great and glorious day, then everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Which might just make you want to jump up. And I really mean everyone, jump up, get on your feet, stand up tall, and sing with me.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. For the Lord God omnipotent reigneth. Hallelujah. Give yourselves a round of applause. Take a seat and we'll finish this story. And so ends this story of the first Pentecost, the birthday of the church, as you hear again today in perhaps a new and different way. May you once again be inspired to believe in God, and may God continue to put joy in your heart and a song upon your lips. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Vicar Maria. Thank you, Sarah. I learned a few things. My knowledge of music was not broad. I had no idea those songs were around in the first century. Who knew? It's awesome, awesome. I'd like to invite Pastor Kim Krog step forward to lead us in our prayer. We do not pray as we take each vote, but we allow the prayer to cover us for the entire session. And it looks like you brought a friend.
Well, after having to follow that, I decided to bring my twin sister Freya to pray with me. Let us pray. Holy God, you have made us your church. Help us to be your church,
to listen to the Spirit and to each other,
and to carry what we have heard here home to share with our communities of faith.
Thank you for making us your church.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Freya. Thank you, Pastor Kim. I'd like to invite Terry Robertson, who's probably standing right behind me, up for a credentials report, and she actually has a microphone.
I actually have a microphone. This is our third credentials report for registration completed as of 1 p.m. May 10th, 2019. Rostered voting members, clergy 98, deacons 6, lay voting members, female 126, male 79. Included in these totals are 19 youth and young adults for a grand total of 309 voting members. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. I'd like to invite Pastor Marty Jacobson from Community Lutheran Church in Rancho Santa Margarita. He's the chair of our elections committee, and he's going to talk about the voting process.
Good afternoon. This time I invite you to please find your ballots or ballot that you found in the envelopes that you received at check-in. There were no floor nominations. We invite you to please vote for one per position unless otherwise noted on the ballot. If you vote for more than instructed, it will be declared an illegal ballot. And after you have filled out your ballot, please raise them up and they will be collected by Synod Council members. So let us take a moment of silence before we vote. You may now vote.
As you are voting, we are going to hear music from Michelle Sherrick of Trinity Victorville, accompanied by Doug Wilson from Here in Hope and Palm Desert. Synod Council members, would you please help with the collection? Hold your ballots up high so people can see if you have them. You might want to fold them in half so that people don't necessarily see who you voted for. Thank you.
Does anybody need more time?
Please hold up your ballots high, high, high. If you've got them, we're going to give 2 more minutes because Michelle's got another piece, and I think we should hear it. Okay.
Thank you very much. I yield back to our bishop.
And Thomas Volpe is here. Thomas is an approved candidate for Word and Sacrament Ministry. He's been working with our Amparo group. Amparo stands for, you're going to tell us what it stands for, because for some reason it's gone straight out of my head. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, good afternoon. I am Thomas Volpe, and I am a candidate in Pacifica Synod. Woo! So Amparo stands for, well, first of all, who has heard of Amparo? How many of you have done something with Amparo? A few hands there, a few hands. Amparo stands for Accompanying Migrant Minors with Protection, Representation, Advocacy, switch those around, and Opportunities. What we do is trying to connect ministries that are already going on, things that are going on in other agencies, things that are going on in your lives, your interests, your desire to learn, with opportunities to represent, to advocate, and to learn more about what is going on with people that are coming to this country as asylum seekers, refugees, children and their families, not only on the Mexico side of the border, but also on this side of the border. We would really appreciate your input. We want to know what you are doing. If you see somebody with a stack of these, please take one. This will tell you all the places that you can go to try to find out what you can do more. And also, our email. Tell us who you are. We want to have you in our network. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. At this point, am going to relinquish the microphone, the chair, to Lori Herman, our Synod Vice President.
This thing's a little wonky. Is that okay? Is that okay? Okay. Good. Thank you. So does that make me the Vice President Bishop? Yeah. Just making sure yeah. All right. All right. At this time, we'd like to recognize those recipients of one of our Pacifica Synod ELCA grant scholarships, etc. These are the recipients of the 2018-2019 Matthew 25 grant awards. This is a fund that was established through the generous gift of Jerry and Linda Engelhardt to help the hungry and the homeless and others in need, as well as helping congregations and organizations develop and expand their community outreach ministries, as described in Matthew 25. When I mention your congregation, if you could please send a representative up, we'll gather here together and then we'll have a very nice picture together. So thank you very much for your service. So Lamb of God Lutheran Church in Anaheim for funding for food supplies for hosting monthly homeless luncheons. Spirit of Peace in Big Bear City, funds to continue simple supper feeding fellowship programs. Please come up and join the bishop. There we go. Very good. Excellent. Good Shepherd Lutheran Church and Welka in Buena Park. Purchase material for blankets for veterans community shelters. Gloria Day in Dana Point. Funds to replenish perishable supplies for community food pantry. St. John's Lutheran Church in El Cajon. Funds to restock community emergency food pantry. Bethlehem Lutheran Church in Encinitas. Funding for after-school homework, assistance programs, and fellowship gathering. Senior Gleaners of San Diego County in Escondido. Recognize, retain, and recruit volunteers, help cover cost of program vehicles. Gloria Day in Fontana, assistance for Bag Ladies Ministry to assess needy families and the homeless. King of Glory in Fountain Valley, support for and supplies and equipment for King's Kitchen outreach dinner. First Lutheran Church in Fullerton, funding for Caring Hands Food Ministry, food pantry, and meals. Our Redeemer Lutheran Church in Garden Grove, financial assistance for Kairos Prison Ministries. St. John's Lutheran Church in Kailua, Hawaii, supplies, equipment for haircuts for the homeless, and the Kailua Housing Service Program. St. John Lutheran Church in Kailua again, funds to continue providing resources for Kailua housing services. Lemon Grove Lutheran Church in Lemon Grove, funds to continue full support of feeding ministry outreach. Lihue, funding for Mobile Munchies community outreach program. Faith Lutheran Church Sun City in Menifee, funds to purchase rice and beans to help feed children on weekends. First Lutheran Church of Ontario, funding to help with their food pantry. Incarnation Lutheran Church of Poway, funding volunteer training for the Freedom to Choose project. Community Lutheran Church in Rancho Santa Margarita, funding to help support the Food Cares program. Eden Lutheran Church in Riverside, homeless lunch, hygiene packs, food cards, and preschool funding. Hope Lutheran Church in Riverside, funds for participation in guest chef program. We're almost done, but there's a lot of you. It's good. It's good. Lutheran Social Services of Southern California, housed in San Bernardino, funding for victims intervention program for victims of domestic violence. Agape House Lutheran Church in San Diego funds to continue and expand their feeding, empowering food insecure students at San Diego State. Lutheran Border Concerns Ministry purchased folding chairs, tables, canopies for breakfast programs in Baja. St. Andrew's Lutheran Church funds for room renovation for guests of Interfaith Shelter and mission trips. Survivors of Torture International in San Diego, funding to assist in providing basic needs for torture survivors and asylum seekers. Uptown Faith Community Service Center in San Diego funds to assist with food hygiene programs. San Marcos Lutheran Church funds to support interfaith community service, help through housing program. Carlton Hills Lutheran Church in Santee, replacement of existing wooden loading docks for their food bank. Calvary Lutheran Church in Solana Beach, support for Calvary's Christmas Angels Ministry, assisting military families. First Lutheran Church in Vista, funding to provide food and clothing to existing missions in San Diego County. And that, my friends, is $25,000 in grants to help the hungry. They're going to have to get the picture from both sides. It's such a big group. Yes, no. Oh, wait, I have control. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure you were back before I gave it back to you. I relinquish the assembly back to you, Bishop.
Thank you. And we are going at this time for resolutions. We bring back the Reverend Laura Zeal.
I'm telling you, you all are a very impressive synod. Back to resolutions. You people are very efficient at this process as well. So we now have an opportunity to take up resolutions 1905 and 1906. Those are not in the notebook, but they are on the tables in front of you. 1905 is on one side, 1906 is on the other. If you can't find one near you, share with your neighbor. Again, I'm going to give you a minute. Everybody have mostly a copy that they can see. In the back, Rachel. Assistant Bishop Line will bring you a copy. She lives to serve. There's a whole cluster of people right back there that feel sad that they don't have a resolution to consider.
Keep your hands up if you don't have one. We're getting people to get them to you. It's also in the guidebook if you have the electronic guidebook downloaded on your iPad or cell phone. You should find it there as well.
They were sent out as a separate attachment after the original. Good for all of you. Disregard technology and go back to paper. I'm proud. Pastor Karen Marone has just a couple to distribute in the back, and then I think we're good. All right. Now, when you come to microphones with your red and green card, you have a full copy of all that we shall debate. Once again, both 1905 and 1906 came after the submittal deadline, which means they must be passed by a 2/3 majority to be brought onto the floor, and we are going to do that en bloc as we did with the other two. So I will read the resolves of 1905 and 1906, and our first vote will be to bring them on the table. We'll then separate them for debate and discussion. 1905. Inclusive and expansive language for humankind and God. Resolved that we in the Pacifica Synod commit to discussion, dialogue, and debate that is probing and respectful, and be it further resolved that this assembly ask the bishop and deans to convene days of conversation around the Pacifica Synod to explore the issues of inclusive language for humankind and inclusive and expansive language for God. And be it further resolved that the Synod worship team take this resolution into consideration as they plan for worship at Synod Assembly and other synodical events where they lead worship, and be it finally resolved that this Pacifica Synod Assembly ask the bishop to report on these conversations at the 2020 Assembly. Resolution 1906, support of proposed social statement, Faith, Sexism, and Justice, a Lutheran Call to Action. Resolved that the Pacifica Synod in Assembly be on record in favor of the adoption of the proposed social statement, Faith, Sexism, and Justice, a Lutheran Call to Action, and be it further resolved that the congregations of the Pacifica Synod study the social statement on faith, sexism, and justice, whether or not it is adopted at the 2019 Churchwide Assembly. Reverend Chair, I move en bloc consideration of resolutions 1905 and 1906.
And again, en bloc means that we need a 2/3 vote to debate. And should that pass, then we will take them one at a time for debate. All in favor of hearing these resolutions, debating them, hold up your green cards. Opposed, red cards. The ayes have it. We will bring these for debate. So we begin with 19-05. The resolutions are before you. Do you need me to read them again before we start debate? Okay, resolved that we in the Pacifica Synod commit to discussion, dialogue, and debate that is probing and respectful, and be it further resolved that this assembly asks the bishop and deans to convene days of conversation around the Pacifica Synod to explore the issues of inclusive language for humankind and inclusive and expansive language for God, and be it further resolved that the Synod worship team take this resolution into consideration as they plan for worship at the Synod Assembly and other synodical events where they lead worship, and be it finally resolved that this Pacifica Synod Assembly asks the bishop to report on these conversations at the 2020 Assembly. Blue microphone.
Gloria Espaceth, Carlton Hills, Santee. Thank you for considering these resolutions. Since the proposed social statement wasn't released until March, it wasn't possible to meet the deadline. This conversation on how we speak of and to God is a very important conversation. It's also one that is not always easy to have. I've been involved in this conversation for at least 35 years and know that sometimes it is very complex just even to talk about who is God and how do we talk to God, because some people fear that their ideas will be shattered, and other people fear that without some change, there's going to be wholesale leaving of the church. It's a conversation we need to have. In Gail Ramshaw's book, God Beyond Gender, 1993, that's 26 years ago, she wrote that we need to be about this conversation. It's going to be a 100-year conversation, but only if we start now. And so it is really vitally important that we have this conversation. So I would urge a yes vote to this resolution.
Thank you. Gold microphone.
Pastor Matt Anderson, Trinity Lutheran in Victorville. I also speak in support of this resolution. I think it's an important conversation to have. It's one where I see a gap often between clergy and lay people in terms of awareness of that this is even an issue in some cases, where we who have been to seminary or graduate school, this is an issue that it's been discussed in those institutions on a regular basis, but not necessarily in our congregations and in our churches. And so I'm in favor of conversations that kind of bridge that gap between training that a lot of clergy have had and through no fault of their own, lay people have not been exposed to some of those conversations. And so I think it's important to have those conversations together, both clergy and lay people.
Others speaking to this motion? We have someone coming forward to the microphone. Gold microphone. Go ahead. Yeah, it's you. Go ahead and pull it down. We're going to have.
I'm fairly new to the Lutheran faith.
Tell us your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Krista Rabone from Fontana.
Okay.
All right. I'm fairly new to the Lutheran faith, and I don't see what problem there is talking to God. And what it says to language for humankind, who are we talking to? Dogs? Cats? I mean, the wording is kind of bizarre, and I don't see what problem there is in talking to God. You just talk to him, don't you?
Thank you for those questions. We could ask the author of the resolution to speak to that if she would like to do so. This wouldn't be you would be yielding your time then to that person.
All
you
right.
can go back.
I know it was a silly question.
No, it's not. There are no such things as silly questions. That's what this debate time is for.
Okay, thank you.
Gloria Espaceth, Carlton Hills. In the proposed social statement, there is a section that articulates, I think, quite well what this issue is about. If you've ever heard someone say, well, it's really about what the man upstairs wants to say, then you know where some of this rootage is. The scriptures clearly bear witness that God is beyond gender, but for God to be named or spoken to with female pronouns or images sometimes is very upsetting to people. And it's really, this is an opportunity for us to go back and ask some of those really basic questions about who is God? How do we speak to God? And as far as the language for humankind, I've been struggling with this one for a long time, and some of you know my personal story. I have 6 brothers and no sisters. So I really know I'm not a man. And so every once in a while, somebody will say, well, what's the big deal? You know how to do this. And I go, yeah, but there's some doors that if I walk through the men's door, you're going to be really embarrassed. And it's just one of those things where women have to do a double think. Is this a door if the word is man? And there was man was used in one of our slides earlier today. But you have to do a double think. Is this a door I can go in, or isn't this a door I can go in? And inclusive human language has been about, in journalism, in publishing for a long time. But I still experience a lot of exclusionary language in the church.
Gold microphone.
I'm Carla Seib-Stockton from Gethsemane in San Diego. And I think it's more about how we talk about God to each other more than how we talk to God. In answer to the question that was stated before, how we talk to God is between us and God, but how we talk about God is more of a matter of the community and uplifting one another.
Is there more speaking to this motion? Are you ready to vote? All in favor, hold green cards up. Opposed, red cards? The green cards have it. The motion has passed. Going now to 19-06. I will read the resolves again. This is before the floor because this is the second one that we voted to take en bloc. Resolved that the Pacifica Synod in assembly be on record in favor of the adoption of the proposed social statement, Faith, Sexism, and Justice, a Lutheran Call to Action, And be it further resolved that the congregations of the Pacifica Synod study the social statement on faith, sexism, and justice, whether or not it is adopted at the 2019 churchwide assembly. Is there speaking to this motion?
Yes.
Oh, right there. Gold microphone.
Carla Seib Stockton, Gethsemane in San Diego again. I think it's very important for us to go on record and say, yes, we support this document. As it was being prepared over the last few years, there was lots of input given by members of the church, and as part of a group that was studying the preparatory documents and giving input, I know for sure that they took that input in and made it part of the social statement that's being proposed that'll be voted on in August. And so it has the words and the thoughts and the feelings and the experiences of the members of this church behind it. And so it's important to consider it and to support it. If you haven't seen it, it's available on the ELC website, and there are some copies here, 20 copies here at the front table that you can have a look at that. Also, some people say, aren't we past this issue already? And I can tell you, no, we are not. There is definitely a need to have further conversation about the place of women and men in society, but not only women and men, but people of all gender expressions to be included in the church. So I encourage you to vote for this resolution.
Blue microphone.
I'm not, Jonathan Doolittle from Claremont, San Diego. I'm not speaking for or against this. I'm just asking a point of clarification for my own mind. We're being asked to vote to support something that none of us have really read or understand the implications of, but yet we're asking that we support the passage of it by this resolution.
Thank you.
Is there a person who can answer that question?
I think one is coming up.
Okay.
Again, Carla Seib Stockton, pastor at Gethsemane. And the answer is yes, we are, because it's been on the ELCA website since March, in mid-March. And so it's out there for you to look at. There are copies here. I hope that if you haven't looked at it already, that you will. But I encourage you to support it just because I say so.
We have someone else coming up to the microphone. If you know you want to speak, you can come up and line up at a microphone and be there ready to be called on. Gold microphone.
Pastor Julie Kelly at Hope Lutheran. I am speaking for this resolution. I just want to say that this is actually something that's been in the works for years. This is something that was actually the results out of the 2009 vote and was begun well before that vote happened at Churchwide. This is a process that a lot of people have taken a lot of time to engage in. Last year, many congregations were asked to engage in the study that was the predecessor to this statement. Out of that, this statement has arisen. It is the corrections and the adjustments from the feedback from those congregations. My congregation was involved in this. I had almost 1/3 of my congregation participate in this study. It was hard. It was divisive at times, and it was really important. At the end of it, they felt like they understood the issues better, and they all agreed that there was a need for a statement such as this. So if you haven't engaged in it, I just want to say this is the time that we trust in our church itself, that this has been prepared by many people who have invested the time into this on the behalf of our entire church, and it's a necessary move for us.
Gold microphone.
Pastor Darren Johnson from Agape House. To expand on that a little bit, I understand the question or the point of if you haven't had or taken, I should say, everyone has had the opportunity to study this document. If you have not taken the opportunity, it would respect your conscience, but would encourage you to abstain from the vote rather than to vote against it, so that you're actually voting on something that you understand. And there will be more opportunity for you to be in conversation. This is really about encouragement to the church-wide body to approve this document. So that's just a suggestion that if you feel supportive of it, vote for it. If you're not sure or don't know, to abstain rather than to oppose something that you're also not aware of.
Blue microphone.
I would like to propose an amendment to the resolution.
Okay.
And move that the first resolve be stricken from the resolution so that we simply are asking to study this document further rather than support something that many people haven't read.
Is there a second to that amendment? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Now the amendment is before us. Usually we ask for those amendments in writing, but since it's just a strikeout, I don't think we need it in writing. We can just, if we can get it on the screen with that first resolve struck out, is that possible? Okay, we'll get it on the screen with the first resolve having strike through, and it will show up in just a second. Can we continue with debate? Do you all understand what we're trying to do? Or do you want to see it on screen? We're okay to continue? Going back to blue microphone, we're going to restart your time now speaking to the amendment.
I want to honor this amendment and honor the work that so many people have done to bring this important social statement to the church. However, I feel that as we gather together as an assembly, it's up to us to be responsible in our voting and to take our situation seriously. We need to have the time to study this and encourage each other to study it. The dialogue is an important part of this entire process. However, I'm not comfortable approving something that I personally haven't read or abstaining from it when I'm a part of a legislative body that has been asked to approve it. I feel my input is necessary, and so what I can support is the study of that and not encouraging others to move it forward. Thank you.
Blue microphone, thank you.
Gloria Espaceth, Carlton Hills. Because it has been on the ELCA website, been considered by the Conference of Bishops, and been considered by the Church Council, we did not feel, or I did not feel, I guess, this need to go back and redo all of that conversation. Last year at this Synod Assembly, 10 minutes was provided to a group of people to introduce the statement and so forth. The reason why it initially just said be on favor is because our church-wide voting members go to church-wide assembly in the same way that we come here. We are not delegates. We cannot instruct our church-wide voting members how to vote, but it is a way to take the sense of the synod. And since we did devote 10 minutes last year in the whole plenary to that document, since it has continually been on the website, I would urge a no vote to this amendment.
Blue microphone.
So I disagree with
name and where you're from.
Nathaniel Lucier from Trinity in Riverside. I disagree with the amendment. As has been mentioned before, it's been available. Last night, me and my mother, who are here, managed to go through most of it with ease. And we've also went through a very tedious process of helping to revise the other one. There's been plenty of access to it. It's been well publicized, there's been access to it. So I think not having read it is a reason to abstain, but not for this amendment or not to change or not to vote against it. All right, that's all.
Thank you. Is there others speaking to the amendment? We're just going to vote on the amendment only. Are you ready to vote on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, raise your green cards. All those opposed, your red cards. Mr. Parliamentarian? It fails. Motion to amend fails. I was wondering if we needed a count, but it looked to me like the cards were there were more red than green. So motion to amend fails. The original motion is back on the floor, and we continue speaking to that original resolution. Blue microphone.
Bishop and Mr.
Who are you?
Oh, Jerry Marisek, King of Glory, Fountain Valley. Bishop and Mr. Chairman. Is it in order to propose a postponement till tomorrow morning? And the reason I'd like to suggest that is I thoroughly agree with everything that's been said about the assembly having had the opportunity to study this. Pastors have brought it back to congregations. There were many discussions. However, many of the lay people really didn't know at the time they were going to be asked to vote on an issue like this at the time all these studies were being done. And I'd like to propose we give at least 16 hours to those people to have a chance to read this.
So you're making that as a motion?
Yes, I move that we postpone the vote on this till tomorrow morning session.
That is in order. Is there a second? Okay, there has been moved and seconded. This is for debate too, right? Okay, it's open for debate. Any speaking to whether or not to table or to postpone? I guess we say to postpone.
Postpone to a certain time.
Postpone till tomorrow, till a resolution's time tomorrow is on the floor. Would you like to come to the microphone?
Krista Rabone, Fontana. I would like to table this until tomorrow. I haven't read it, and I can't read too much on the computer. I have a sleeping disorder, so I fall asleep when I look at the computer. It's just one of those things. But I have the sheet now, and I can study it tonight. And I think it would be a prudent idea to wait, because there are so many of us that don't have a clue what's going on.
Thank you. Thanks. Others speaking to this motion? Are you ready to vote? This is just to postpone and pick it up again tomorrow. All in favor, raise your green cards. Opposed, red cards. We will talk about this tomorrow. And we will move on now to we are going to move on to away from resolutions at this time to other business that we have. We are one of our close neighbors is Southwest California. Bishop Guy Irwin has been sick all week, could not be here, but he sent a video, and I think his voice is pretty froggy on it as far as I understand. But let's see what he has to say at this time.
Grace and peace in the name of the risen Christ. Dear Pacifica friends, I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today out in Palm Desert, but it's good at least to be able to greet you in this way. I hope you're having a wonderful assembly. I wish you great joy in your fellowship and renewed energy for mission. Your assembly's theme lifts up the importance of listening to God and to each other. And I'd like to add to that our two synods, Pacifica and Southwest California, have been good at listening to one another and working together. We do this, of course, in the ministries that we share, like Lutheran Social Services of Southern California and Lutheran retreats, camps, and conferences, but also in the Theoasis Theological Conference we co-sponsor every fall out in the desert, and which brings us together in a really useful way. And of course, Bishop Andy and I work together as closely as any two bishops in the ELCA, and I am grateful for his partnership and friendship. Our two synods have so much in common, a shared history and geography, and a common challenge to be a Lutheran presence in a rapidly growing and ever-changing part of the country, one in which we're not very numerous or very conspicuous. But we are here. We have influence. We stand for something. We make manifest God's self-giving love for all in a world of selfishness and suspicion of others. We represent in our church a faith that can stand up to death and resist evil. You've had a recent tragic shooting in Poway. We had one late last year in Thousand Oaks. Both our local congregations in those communities offered care and solace to their neighbors. And our two synods and your bishop and I have added our voices to those who cry out for sensible solutions to gun violence and a greater urgency in building tolerant, diverse communities. So keep listening, Pacifica, and your friends over here to the west will do so too, listening to our neighbors' needs, listening to our congregation's hopes and prayers, and listening to God's call to us to serve here where we are planted, under the California sun, to do the work we are called to do, creating a world in which all are fed and housed and none neglected, for the sake of Jesus, the one in whose name we are called to serve. God bless you, Bishop Andy, and pastors, deacons, and people of the Pacifica Synod. We in the Southwest California Synod are proud to be your partners, and have a great assembly.
On the territory of the Southwest California Synod is California Lutheran University, with whom we have a close relationship, even though they're not on our area. And then on California Lutheran University has a seminary, Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary, which is actually on Sierra Pacific Synod, our other California Synod's territory. And Sarah Wilson is here to represent both of those institutions and tell us a little bit about them and give us some updates. Thank you and welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. God be with you.
And also with you.
So on behalf of California Lutheran University and the university's seminary, PLTS, I bring you greetings. This year has been amazing, but it's also like life. It's full of the highest joys, and we've also had our share of challenges. The borderline shooting happened mere miles from California Lutheran University, and we all heard the news and were personally touched by the devastating wildfires in northern and southern California. But we are, by the grace of God, we are a resilient people. And so with that, I'm going to pause and share with you our resiliency video.
How can anyone plan for what happened to us last fall? How can anyone be ready to experience such loss in our community? Mental, emotional, and even physical pain has been stirred up inside each of us. The fire has singed our land, leaving it burnt and charred. The storms that came both from the sky and our eyes have shed almost the equivalence in rainfall. Rain that has flooded our streets and slid down our cheeks. Although so much has affected us, we still remain resilient. The waters that have fallen have made it possible for new life to take its course. Where there was pain, we emerge and sprout like buds of new life. The area is growing and starting to heal, as are we. Our land and our community remain resilient. Many community members have blossomed and shown us what it means to be truly resilient. The facilities crew carrying propane tanks through scorched fields to supply power to the KCLU radio signal, the counseling and psychological service team and their readiness during the wake of the tragedy, Mission and Identity, organizing and distributing quilts to our community, providing a sense of warmth and comfort. We start anew. Inside many of us, life is returning, and returning to these areas as well. Our environment and our community are healing beautifully. It is because of the strength of our community and your support that we have remained resilient during these challenging times. We thank you for everything. Something beautiful has come out of sadness. Our community, tied together like strong oak roots, will grow back and stand tall once again.
Christ is risen.
Christ is risen indeed. Alleluia.
Alleluia. So I am also so grateful to share that, Cal Lutheran and PLTS, we have one common mission, and that is to lift up, educate, and equip leaders for the church and the world. And we are so grateful for your prayers, your financial support, and your encouragement and help in identifying leaders for our church and our world. Coming to this assembly, it really touched me. So I was with you 4 years ago now in Hawaii, and I met one of your candidates for ministry, Jennifer Mattis. And it was at that assembly that I met Jennifer, and I said, have you thought about being a pastor? And she was like, well, actually, I have. And you know what? Jennifer is going on internship in the fall, and she is going to be one of the future pastors of the ELCA. And so I want to thank you for lifting up students like Jennifer and also colleagues like Pam Reynolds and Julie Patton and Louis Molman. So thank you so much for supporting our students. And I bring you greetings in the form of our latest admissions video from the seminary.
Who we are is how we show up in the world. And so when you start showing up in the world, you impact it, it impacts you, and that gets internalized. It creates a whole different dynamic in the seminary and in the church. We're trying to invite students into a kind of a holistic understanding of what it means to be a formed person of faith.
There is something about PLTS that I've not really seen at any other seminaries. They have redesigned their school and their curriculum and calling these faculties from all these different walks of life to be able to show people what this world can be like.
I felt like I was going to be able to get a more robust and well-rounded theological education that takes into account that there are lots of other people in the world.
PLTS has helped me learn church leadership that goes beyond the congregation to participation in the community.
We are an urban seminary. Now that we are in the center of Berkeley, I think that that is an awesome attribute to our school because it forces us to encounter people who are different than us and who are similar to us, and it's a beautiful thing.
It's this being here that's transformative. Seminary can help us to further that faith, but also more critically engage it.
PLTS would be great for a person who wants to do real change in the world, who wants to change the church and is looking for new ways to do church.
If you come here, you're going to have to engage in the world. You're going to have to open yourself up to a variety of experiences and let that impact you.
Thank you so much for supporting PLTS and Cal Lutheran.
Thank you, Sarah. And I think it's only fair to note that Jennifer Mattis will be doing her internship at Our Redeemer in Garden Grove, right here in our synod as well. So we look forward to welcoming her when she comes in. We are on break until for 20 minutes. Listen for the cowbells and come back in.
Actually, he'll probably introduce you again, so we may just not go. We may be a couple minutes late. I know, right?
Yeah, I know. We should have said we're not. The second piece is not the one we're playing.
Yeah. Well, I thought so. I knew it was with guitar, right? So yeah, it's with a drum. It's probably okay. Yeah. But I did have a moment of, yeah, because I was like, well, that might not be long enough. It might need a couple extras. I got this other thing that we can just throw together real quick. That was super cool. If I did, everybody fully was watching. I sort of thought for a minute, is this like playing a bar? I mean, they didn't talk so much during the coding, so it was okay. It kind of gets people's attention. Yeah. Yes. You're a little not seen because of the speaker. Is you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you can stand on this side if you want.
Well, I'd rather hear. Unless you want to just move over slightly.
One time I was rehearsing for a solo concert, and it was a piece that I start, and then the pianist comes in. So I started playing, and then it came time for the pianist to come in, and they didn't, so I stopped, and she's like, oh, that was me, I was just watching. I ran into some people from Temecula, and they said they were about midway back on this side, but I don't want their seats yet, I can't see them. Ran into Shirley, I think it's Shirley. Maybe Paso Latino. There's Bishop Andy Dale. And I bet he's old enough to look at that Okay, and you got my name right. I'm so proud of you.
Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes, I'm so proud of you. I was like, oh, I didn't tell him how it's pronounced, but you did it. It was awesome.
No, I know. Okay.
That sounds like London soldiers. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's correct. In American. It's Slovak. It's Shavik. Shavik. No, you know, Sharik is so much better than what I usually get. I often get Sharik, but I'm like, because that's how it is in the Quran. But my name comes from Russian, not from Farsi. So, and in Russian it means small ball, little ball. It's a common name for puppies.
Somebody pulled me aside and said, we talked about listening to each other. Postponing the social statements so
It seems quite reasonable thing to do. I looked through it quickly, because I just got it, and it seems quite reasonable. I like it.
No, it was good. We did a study for 3-4 weeks on the draft. I haven't seen what's revised.
It really is challenging for those who see God as God. Making love of God, but Kinley, I moved some candles. You may want to look in there. I'm wearing a robe after all, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't. No, I'm going to preach in the pulpit because where the cross is, I think that I would look stupid with the cross. And you are cutting me right now.
Oh, down there.
And this
yes.
way,
So I'll go that way now.
a microphone.
Yeah, but that will be easier to get to. So if I have to go around that side to get to the microphone. Yeah. You didn't see my grand chate from one to the other? I did a whole...
We have one in there, but I might just do the Lord bless you and keep you because I can do that by heart. Yeah. Okay. You're welcome, Kinley. It's going great. You guys have done a great job. You know what? Welcome back, Assembly. We are going to have a time to welcome back. We're going to turn to more music. He is ever over me, Michelle Sherrick, and Doug, and it looks like Matt Anderson, not Doug Wilson. So let's welcome them back to the stage.
Active listening, the act of fully hearing and comprehending the meaning of what someone else is saying. Avoid getting distracted by your own thoughts. Focus on the speaker and topic instead. Try not to interrupt the other person. Let them finish and then respond. Use door openers. These are phrases that show you're interested and keep the other person talking. Show that you're listening with body language. If appropriate, take notes during important conversations. Paraphrase what others have said to make sure you're both on the same page. Thanks for listening.
And we're going to continue. We're going to continue our discussion about listening with our keynote speaker, Dr. Brian Collins from Cal Lutheran University. We had come up with a theme for this assembly a week before I went for the convocation, and Dr. Collins presented on his philosophy club there at Cal Lutheran. I thought, wow, that sounds like it fits in pretty well. And so I got our organizers in touch with him, and we're really glad that he's here. He is assistant professor of philosophy and also the founder and director of the SoCal Philosophy Academy. Dr. Collins received his BA from St. Olaf. That's 2 in one day from St. Olaf with Katherine Johnson back there. And his MA and PhD from the University of Iowa. In his work in the field of philosophy, he is most interested in ethics and political philosophy and is here today to show us how philosophy can help us talk to each other more effectively. Welcome, Dr. Collins.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. All right, I'm on the screen, but my PowerPoint is not. We'll get it out. Well, I'm honored to be here. And the structure of the next hour is going to be, I'm going to try to say something meaningful about having difficult dialogues in the next 20 minutes or so. Nice, simple task. And then we'll take some time for question and answers after that. And then from 3:30 to about 4, we are going to try to apply some of these skills and practice these skills. You are all going to have some of these difficult dialogues. So that's going to be the plan. It's going to be exciting. So to get started, I, again, as the bishop said, am an assistant professor of philosophy at Cal Lutheran University, also the founder and director of the SoCal Philosophy Academy, the goal of the academy is to introduce philosophy to high schoolers, elementary schoolers, and middle schoolers, as well as promote public philosophy, so philosophy out in the public. That's all going to tie in. I'll explain a little bit more. Is it going to work? Yes, okay. So, you have been seeing this image all day. You will all weekend. I'm sure you've been seeing it for a while before that. I'm very happy that the focus is on listening, because if we're interested in difficult dialogues, I think the more important, also the more difficult aspect of it is the listening. I think it's easier to become a good speaker, to be able to speak well, share with people what your thoughts are. It's harder to really take the time and energy to hear what other people have to say. So that's going to be mostly the focus of what I'm talking about. Sorry, there's a little delay. Okay. So this is to get us started. We live in a culture where for a long time we've been told, at least in general, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics, and there's lots of other things that could be added to that list as well. I think what this has done has created an inability to actually talk about these things. So instead of don't talk about them, because they are difficult conversations to have. I think the message should be, we need to develop the sorts of skills that's going to put us in a place to have these difficult conversations. So that's the goal. All right. Okay. As we get started, to acknowledge the difficulty, as you all know, these conversations are difficult. If they were easy, we wouldn't call them difficult dialogues. We also wouldn't dedicate all the time we do to thinking about how we're going to have these conversations with people. It's a long process-oriented endeavor. It's not like we're going to sit down with somebody we disagree with or somebody we don't know and come together and agree about everything at the end of the conversation. Unless we've got decades, we need to be thinking about process instead, I think, of product, what we're looking for. It is so difficult and so process-oriented because I think it's skill and character-oriented. These are skills that we each have to develop and character traits that we have to develop. As we all know, those don't come quickly or easily. You don't just become a patient person overnight. So, this is some of the difficulty. And the third is that we actively have to work against these natural responses that we as humans have. We naturally make judgments. This is what we do in order to function efficiently as animals. We make automatic judgments in order to not spend all our time thinking about everything. That's good for a lot of things. That's really bad when we have to have difficult conversations. So in these cases, we actually have to fight against these very strong inclinations to make judgments, to shut off, to tune out, to start thinking about what we're going to say. And that's a difficult and energy-intensive process. All right, quick outline. I'm going to very quickly introduce a little bit about my background as it relates to this conversation, why I think philosophy can help us think through this. Then I'm really going to quickly talk about what philosophy is. For our purposes, if you leave here without a full understanding of what philosophy is, that's okay. Because then I'm going to make the connection and I'm going to talk about the skills that I think one has to develop in order to be a good philosopher. And those same skills are going to be what we transfer to this conversation of difficult dialogues. And then we'll end with some time for question and answers, and then we'll get into practicing these skills. Okay, so introduction. My name is Brian Collins. I grew up in the Midwest, western Wisconsin, right on the Minnesota border, outside the Twin Cities. This connects to St. Olaf. So I went to St. Olaf for undergrad. I studied philosophy and psychology there. I entered college not knowing what philosophy was, as is the case with most people. Fortunately, I was forced to take a philosophy class because it was part of the core requirements, and I quickly fell in love with it. I fell in love with the process of questioning everything. So I decided I was going to major in it, along with my psychology degree. My view of it was I didn't see it being practical at all. I found it to be enjoyable, and once I started asking the questions, I couldn't stop asking them. So I thought, I want to do this. But like most people, I saw it as impractical. Ivory tower sort of investigations. It doesn't get anything done. I've done a complete 180 on that. So after college, I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. I thought I wanted to go to law school because I was interested in politics and law. But I wasn't convinced, so I decided to test the waters and try other things out. I ended up applying to Teach for America, which is an organization that places college graduates in school districts that historically have struggled for various reasons. So lots of the school districts are either very rural or very urban. So I taught middle school math and science, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in Los Angeles for 3 years. Here's where the transition happened for me. I realized what all the skills that I was using and employing during that time had to do with philosophy. They were the skills that I had learned in all my philosophy classes. I wasn't teaching my middle school students about Plato and Aristotle and Descartes and Martha Nussbaum, but I was using those critical thinking skills and communication skills. So I decided that's what I want to do. I want to use education as my foundation. That's what I saw as my vocation, and I wanted it to be philosophy. So I went back to school, went to grad school at the University of Iowa. That's where I got my master's and PhD in ethics and political philosophy, specifically where those two meet. I get a lot of chuckles when I tell people that's where my interests lie, because we really see oftentimes a big divide between those two things. Hence, we have to have difficult dialogues about how they might meet, because we all think they should somehow. I taught for a year in Iowa before accepting a position at California Lutheran and moving back out to Southern California with my family. And now we're here and loving it. And I've started the SoCal Philosophy Academy. So the upshot for all this, how this connects, is really the practicality of philosophy. I know I'm not going to convince you in those short 3 minutes of the practicality of philosophy, but that conversion happened for me in thinking, and that's what I try to now share with high school students, middle school students, elementary school students, but also my university students, talking about how these skills that we develop by reading philosophical texts and thinking about these difficult issues are ones that are foundational to everything we want to do. Everything that we think is important requires this level of rigorous thinking and then being able to communicate with people about it. And that includes arguing with people about it. That's at the core of philosophy. You have to become a good arguer. And oftentimes it gets messy, but when it's done well, it really facilitates understanding. So the practice and practicality of philosophy. Okay, so we're going to go through this quick. Philosophy, the term means love of wisdom. What that includes is investigating the most fundamental questions that we have as humans. Questions about religion, questions about the nature of reality, questions about ethics, questions about politics. And we, as philosophers or in the discipline of philosophy, we try to dig down and ask those very fundamental questions. The thing that I think is most important to stress is that it's an activity. Philosophy is not a group of individuals. Those are people who do philosophy. It's also not a thing, a tangible thing. It is an activity that is engaged in, and it's a process. We can jump to the next slide to translate that into the difficult dialogues. So it's analogous to the scientific method. What I mean by that is we're asking questions. The scientific method does not end. We're interested in asking a question, posing a hypothesis, investigating that, and then continually going from there. This is how I see philosophy as well, except we're not asking about the physical universe, we're asking about much more abstract conceptual things. All right, next slide. So how does any of this help with difficult dialogues? Well, I think the first reason is that philosophy requires you, the individual, to start at a place of wonder. It demands curiosity. If you don't wonder about things or you're not curious about things, you're not even going to start asking the questions in the first place. This, I take to be one of the most fundamental approaches to having difficult dialogues. This is not easy. To wonder, to be curious about somebody that you might think is completely wrong about everything they believe and everything they do. To have the approach to approach that with wonder and curiosity is really difficult. But if it can be done, which I think it can, and we can develop it as a skill, it will make us better at approaching these conversations. So it requires wonder. Next is it requires humility. These are tied together. In order to do philosophy well, you need to admit that you don't know everything. Philosophers aren't good at that, but they should be, right? They understand that they don't know everything, otherwise they wouldn't still be doing it. Oftentimes it gets covered up, but it requires humility. I think difficult dialogues require the same thing. We need to come to the conversation searching or looking for something, not come to it trying to assert something or drive it home. Because if that's how we're approaching it, I think we should assume that the other people in the conversation are approaching it that way as well, and then nothing happens. So if we come to it actually wondering about what other people think and have to say and how they feel, and we have a certain level of humility about our own thoughts and feelings and positions and beliefs, I think we're setting ourselves up for more success. Again, these are really hard. The third is patience. You have to be very patient. We don't solve big ethical problems in one day. We don't accomplish or come to solutions in these difficult dialogues in one sitting as well. This is difficult. We want answers. We want to convince people of things that we take to be the foundation of truth. But it doesn't happen fast. So patience is another virtue, character trait that can help us. All right. One more? Okay. As I said at the very beginning, productive dialogue requires speaking. We have to speak. But more importantly, we have to listen. Now, the reason I stress that is because we all know how to speak. We all know how to say what we think. We all are most acquainted with what we think individually, right? If anybody knows what you think, it's you. And so we know how to express that. We are worse at listening, really listening to what other people have to say. All right. I'm going to go through this one quickly because it'll come up in the next, in the activity, in the application part. So active listening, or I like this phrase. It's called listening and speaking from the heart. Now, in a lot of ways, that paints a picture of what we're trying to do. It doesn't tell you exactly how to do it. It doesn't even tell you exactly what you're supposed to be doing. But I think it captures something. We want to be trying to connect. We want to be opening up to what's being said. Now, when we're speaking from the heart, I think a reciprocal process is happening. We are opening up to somebody that we hope is listening from the heart. So some of these include, we can go through them pretty quick. Try not to make assumptions as we're trying to listen, because those assumptions actually create barriers to then us continuing to listen. We need to be present and attentive, focusing on the person who's speaking, not trying to come up with what we're going to say next. Try to acknowledge what the person is saying. That doesn't mean necessarily agreeing, but it also doesn't necessarily mean blocking out. Show humility. This comes back to all of these skills. Don't go to it with the assumption that you're right. Don't go to it with the assumption that the other person doesn't know what they're talking about. Having a level of humility. Summarize, recap, and continue the discussion, and then last one, be open to more discussion. I go through these quickly, and I want to keep reminding us this is not easy. You know, we all know it's not easy, but I think reminding ourselves of that is very important because it helps us develop that skill of patience. It helps us remember that we're going to try it and it's going to be hard and we're going to feel frustrated. And then we need to come back and try it again. And it's still going to be hard and we're still going to be frustrated. And we need to come back again. I think constructive dialogue, that is civil discourse, difficult dialogues, require this process. It requires a common process. If we're not talking the same language, not literal language matters too. But if we're not talking the same language, if we're not engaged in a common activity oriented towards a common goal, that's where roadblocks come up. So when you're doing philosophy, there's also a very standard process how you approach it. You ask a question, you read all the texts, or you try to, that everybody else has written about it, and then you think critically and you begin writing and sorting through, and you go to conferences and you talk about it, and there's lots of stuff. So it's that common process that allows us to go through the investigation. I think difficult dialogues require the same thing. So when we get into the application in just a little bit, we're going to be doing it in a very process-oriented way. It's going to, in some ways, feel forced because we're not used to having conversations like this. But we're also not used to having very good or constructive conversations. We're used to listening to somebody and then responding to them and trying to get them where we want them to go. So a process, I think, can help us better develop these skills so that even when we are going into sort of loose everyday conversations, we can be better at them. All right. Lots of this is going to come up, and I'm going to point it out in the application part. I want to offer some of these resources. You can put them all up on the screen. These are some resources that I've had personal experience with and are amazing groups, organizations helping this communication process in different venues. So the first one is the Center for Counsel. Second one is Circle Ways. Third one is Ways of Counsel. Those are all three are Los Angeles-based organizations. They all have ties to the Ojai Foundation, and they practice a method and process called counsel. I'll leave that there, and you can all look it up later, but these are wonderful. The last one, Speaking Down Barriers, is a South Carolina organization that does a similar sort of thing. It helps individuals, it helps groups work through the process and develop the skills to have these very difficult conversations. Some are working in prisons, some are working in schools, some are working in communities, some are working in individual relationships. But all of them, the goal is to help foster this process. Now, to quickly summarize before we jump into questions, I'm a philosopher. I believe investigation of truth. I didn't get the warning, so we're okay. I think the investigation of truth is fundamental to our motivation as human beings, as persons. I think that really difficult question, that really difficult approach to the world can help, not all philosophers are great people, not all are great listeners, but it can help us become better communicators and investigators. What I hoped to really quickly raise today and continue to raise as we apply it is some of those skills. Coming to a situation or approaching people with a sense of wonder and curiosity, having patience and humility. These are skills that are really difficult, but are ones that I think are important to having these difficult dialogues be constructive. If the parties are not entering into this conversation, into conversations with these intentions, then not much is accomplished. We all know that. We've all had non-productive conversations. So these skills, I think, are ones that I wanted to highlight and tie to this universal investigation of truth that is philosophy. We're going to start with Lori coming up. I think she's got a question prepared to get things rolling. Then we'll open things up for a few minutes. If anyone has general questions, we've got the microphone and also texting to the screen. And then we're going to jump straight into the application, which is all of y'all having small group conversations, which are going to be moderated heavily. I'm going to be helping through this in order to emphasize the skills, but that are also going to be about difficult topics, or a difficult topic. Okay?
Do you want to grab your mic? We can have a seat.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. So as you were talking, I kept thinking about, I'm a question person. Ask the bishop. I ask lots of questions. But I was wondering, how does one cultivate wonder and humility? I know you talked about that being an important thing, but how do we get there?
My answer always starts with, it's difficult. Especially, I think the older we get. The reason I try to push philosophy back into schools is because I think we enter the world knowing how to be curious, being naturally curious, having a natural sense of wonder. And then I see it as unfortunate. Unfortunately, we seem to lose that as we go along. Now, I don't think there can be one thing to prescribe, but like one universal prescription, here's how you get wonder back. But I think for many of us, we've had these experiences where we get that spark again in our lives, in our adult lives. So one way that I try to do it or encourage people is to say, try to find that, whatever that was, whatever got you excited last in that childlike way. Try to approach more things in that way to try to spark that wonder again. It's not a guarantee that that will work, but it is a difficult process, so that's one way that I see it being possible.
I want to let you guys know, too, if you have any questions, you're welcome to come to the mics in the front here so that you can ask them of our speaker here. So the other thing that I was thinking about as you were talking was my own personal barriers, like you said. We have judgment. We bring ourselves to the party every time, right? So I wanted to know, how do you ask questions and then really listen for those answers of somebody that you already know you disagree with, and how do you do it in a way that is not automatically confrontational?
I think part of the patience is being patient with others, but also it's being patient with oneself. We're not always ready to enter into these difficult conversations. So I think part of being patient is acknowledging that sometimes you can't. You have to say, no, this is not the time. I'm not going to approach this well. You might think somebody else isn't going to approach it well either. For whatever reason, sometimes it means putting it off. The hope is that we don't continue to just put it off forever, because otherwise we just get further polarized. So it's continuing and trying to be mindful that we're trying to develop these skills and then try to employ them as we can, really being aware of who we are and where we're at and how much we can do and how much we think we can't do, and then continually trying to develop that.
I think we have a question on the side.
Thank you, Dr. Collins. My first question, I'll just keep to one since there's somebody behind me.
Yeah.
I'm curious, since you do ethical and political philosophy, is there ever a time, or how would you describe, when is the time when it is ethical to stop listening, to end a dialogue, when it's become destructive rather than constructive? Like how would you counsel us to be able to name when we've reached that time, if there is a time in your mind when it's ever ethical to stop listening?
Yes, I think it is. There are times, and I think it connects to this previous question. I don't think there's one way to describe it universally that we can just apply as a rule, but to describe it, I think when conversations become harmful to you individually is a time where I think it could be ethical to stop that conversation. I think also if you see a conversation being harmful to others, maybe it's not harmful to you, but it's harmful to others, I think sometimes it's ethical to say, this is not a conversation I want to be a part of, or I want to listen to, or one that I think we should be listening to. I think that's different, though, from saying, I'm done listening and I never want to listen to this again. So part of it is this process. Now, we always hope that whoever we're having these difficult conversations with, everything we're trying to do is reciprocated. Oftentimes that's not the case. And this is where the really, okay, so what do you do when somebody really doesn't want to listen at all? All they want to do is speak. I don't have one concrete answer for that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Early feminist theologians identified that pride tended to be more an issue for men and self-negation for women. So I'm wondering if some participants who are marginalized, when they're in the conversation, what they really need is pride rather than humility.
Thank you. Yes. I hear that. Thank you. So, speaking from myself as a male, I know I need humility. This is societal, this is individual, there's lots of things. And yes, I think that's a great point to make, that humility for some, if they are already too humble, right? They don't take their view or their thoughts or their feelings to be representative or even important of having voice. I think the opposite is necessary. I think humility can come in as well for allies to those individuals and groups as well. It can encourage people to be allies, to say, I'm not the only one here. It's not only how I feel or how I think. There's others who you may see struggling. And the humility could then come in for the allyship as well. So thank you. That's a great point to emphasize.
I think if there, one more person. Yes.
I'm wondering if in advocating for civil conversation between disagreeing parties, if you've ever run into the criticism of tone policing, particularly perhaps from marginalized people or oppressed communities, and so if you've kind of received that and how you would respond to that, I don't want to say accusation, but criticism of this realm of thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So I approach all of this, and what I was just talking about, I think about it very individualistically. So even as I presented it, it's in a way that I see the world. Everybody does not have the same experiences. Everybody is not treated the same. There are privileges that some have that others don't have. So one thing to notice is in those skills that I was trying to emphasize, none of them focused on what you say to somebody else or how you tell somebody else to do it. So in the case, so I have experienced this where I may see myself as encouraging a type of tone. Sorry, I'm going to stand so I can see you. Yeah. Where I'm trying to encourage better conversation as I see it. And somebody has said, no, I don't want to do that. Now, I could push back, right? I could say like, no, I see it like this. We need to have the conversation like this. This is going to be more constructive. Now, already there's a tension in what I was just prescribing for how conversations to be had, and then me pushing on individuals in a conversation to have it in a different way. That's not exhibiting humility about my view. Conversations are going to turn out bad, even if we became experts in all of this, which we're not going to be today by any means. Even if we did, we would still have conversations that are not constructive.
But am I hearing you say like one option would be to continue the conversation in the way you would advocate for while allowing the other person to continue the conversation in their way?
Yes. And here, so I'm imagining a fictional conversation right now. And if I was, let's say, even if I felt accused of this, my hope would be that I would be able to take that criticism and continue to listen through it. So not let it be a roadblock to then me saying, oh, they don't want to hear what I have to say. I'm not going to listen to what they have to say. So hopefully take that criticism and ask, what can I learn about this? Because that conversation alone might not accomplish much, but if you can develop a connection and further develop whatever relationship there is there, then that can lead to a further conversation that hopefully can be better and more constructive.
So I think we do need to go ahead and to move into our next time and then perhaps Pastor Darren, you can talk to him afterwards.
Yeah,
So
I'll catch you.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So we're jumping to the next PowerPoint. This is going to be very difficult to do in 20 minutes. So it's going to add difficulty to the conversation. But I do want to at least start to help us walk through it with the acknowledgement, with the explicit acknowledgement that we're not going to accomplish much in a very concrete fashion right now. What I hope for this to do is simply to help us see how some of these skills and how us focusing on our listening can affect how a conversation goes. Highlighting those skills, highlighting that process, my hope is then that you take this onto later today, tomorrow, next week, next month, and continue to try to develop these skills. So, this is all the acknowledgement of the difficulty. If we had more time, I was going to remind us. So we can actually jump ahead a few slides. One more slide. One more. Okay. So here's the guidelines. I'm just going to read them really quickly. In the back, this is probably hard to see. So the guidelines are going to be to try to listen from the heart. These are all encouragements. I encourage you to try not to be thinking of your response or your own story when you're not the speaker. What I think you should, to try to develop these skills, seek to hear what the other person is saying in a way that you would be able to say it back to them afterwards in a way that they would endorse. So this is trying not to put your own spin on things. When it is your turn to speak, speak concisely. That's going to be really important because we don't have much time. Okay, next. I would like us to be conscientious of pausing briefly between speakers. So even though we're tight on time, I think pauses and sort of quiet space in between is important enough to keep. So pause to let things sink in, and also for the next speaker to reflect before they start talking. Seek to share a story and ideas, not to persuade. So I've been talking a lot about the skill of listening, but we're going to be speaking as well. Dialogues have speech involved. So the listening is really important, but we also need to speak. What I want us to be trying to focus on saying is some sort of story, some sort of experience, not some sort of principle or doctrine that's just being put out there and then is going to sit. So it's sharing something about yourself. Because these are difficult conversations, difficult dialogues, I think we should also be open and willing for anyone to pass whenever they would like. People do not have to speak if they don't want to. So those are some really quick general guidelines. Okay, on this slide, we're going to go through the first two, and I'm going to guide everybody through it. So, perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into small groups. You're not going to move too far because we're already very cozy. And we are going to introduce ourselves to one another. This is going to be really brief. Then I'm going to call us back, and the quicker we can do this, the better. And I'll explain the next thing we're going to do, and then we'll get things going. So if you could, it would be best if the front rows just turned, and then from there, so you're actually facing one another. Best if you're in something of a circle, but you don't have to move far. 3 or 4, introduce yourselves very quickly. I need that up again. The PowerPoint. Okay, I see some people looking back up this way. So when you are finished introducing yourselves, turn back up here. Or not physically, but at least so I can see you're finished. Okay. So, being in Southern California, for most of us, we face conversations about immigration in a way that's different than others might in the country. And I'm guessing many of you have had difficult dialogues about immigration. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to engage in a very quick, abbreviated conversation. However, it's going to be structured in a way different and in order to emphasize some of these skills. So for the next 1 minute, and this is going to feel like an eternity. What I'm going to ask each of you to do is think about the topic of immigration. What I want you to try focusing on while you're thinking is what in your life experience has shaped your thoughts and perspective on whatever it is you're thinking. So what I'm really asking you to do is be thinking in terms of story. What in your past has shaped how you think about this topic? The reason we're taking this 1 minute is so that we don't have to be thinking about what we're going to say while somebody else is speaking. So about 30 more seconds, and then I'll give the next direction. Okay, I hear some whispers. People are ready to talk. All right. Could I get the next 2 bullets up? Actually, next 3. Okay. When I set you free, what we're going to do is the person in your group that's sitting closest to these blue balloons is going to be the person who starts. And then we're going to move clockwise. And I would like, if you feel comfortable, remember you can pass, I would like each of you to take turns sharing your story. Now, I put it in those terms specifically because if we're sharing stories, that helps facilitate listening from the heart more easily. Because we're not hearing somebody's views and somebody's political debate or stump speech. We're hearing a story about a person. So I say that specifically. Share your story. Up there it says 3 minutes max. We don't have 3 minutes, unfortunately. So we're going to try for 1 minute. During that 1 minute that each person's sharing, try to be listening fully to what they're saying. Once you get around, you're going to go around again, if there's time, and you're going to respond to what you've heard. Do your best not to plan that out while people are talking. This is hard. That's what we do. We think about what we're going to say. Do your best. So feel free to pause. Feel free to take your time and respond. In those directions, again, I say, I focus it on oneself. Has anything that's been said raised something for you? So again, it's all self-focused. Listening to others, but then responding with ourselves. I don't think there will be time for this, but if you're a very quick group, you can then engage in more open conversation where it's not structured, you're not going around in a circle, about things that arose, using I statements, seeking clarification from people, identifying agreements with what other people have said, talking about the process or how the process felt. Now, at some point during this process, I'm going to stop us just to quickly wrap things up so we're not going for the next 4 hours. But wherever you're at, I'll jump in. But I want to get you started. Person closest to the blue balloon begins.
We're actually okay for you to go a bit longer. So I know really you'd like, 15, 20 minutes for this, right? We probably don't want that. listening exercise and stuff like that, and getting ready for the next thing. So there's always one more thing. And I consider, I'm like, oh, I can go down there, but then probably like something will happen right after, and I'll be trying to run back up again.
Wrap it up at about 4, I think. So we got a couple minutes.
Yeah, I was just told.
She's giving me the
hard line.
4 or 5.
right? I am going to bring us back together as a whole group in about 30 seconds. All right, I hate cutting off quality conversations, but if you would start reorienting yourselves back up here, we'll wrap it up so we can move on. Okay, I'm going to jump in. How many groups solved all of the world's immigration issues? I've done my job then. No. I'm guessing what you found is that by sharing stories, no one concrete thing was solved, because the conversation actually wasn't about solving a problem. It was about expressing one's thoughts and one's experiences connected to those thoughts. Raise your hand if that conversation felt different than some other conversations you've had about immigration. Okay. Now, we don't have time to get all that feedback, but what I would encourage you to do individually is to ask yourself why. Why did that conversation, why did that process, or why did your approach to that conversation end up being different from other conversations you've had? Now, we do need to acknowledge that this is not a normal gathering of people. We already are here with a common goal. So already we've got a head start on the process, right? So this in some ways is an idealized setting. It's not normal. It might not have been as difficult as other conversations you've had, and that might be because of reasons besides what you just put into it. So as we wrap up, I wanted to just reiterate and highlight again what I hope to express during this last hour, and what I hope for all of you to continue to reflect on. Because difficult dialogues, difficult conversations don't happen in one sitting. Skill building, character development doesn't happen in one day. And our ability to engage in these difficult dialogues doesn't happen in one day either. So whatever I may have said or not said in this hour, and whatever you may have felt or not felt, and experienced or not experienced, I hope you to continue to reflect on that in the next few days, at least few hours, months, and years. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Dr. Collins. That was very helpful. I'm inviting to the stage right now a woman who engages in difficult conversations all the time. She's the executive director of our Lutheran Office of Public Policy up in Sacramento, Regina Banks. She's brand new to the job, and we are thrilled that this is her first Synod Assembly. Let's welcome her to Pacifica.
Not quite that tall. Good afternoon, Pacifica. I bring you greetings on behalf of the Policy Council of the Lutheran Office of Public Policy, and I am so glad that we are learning to have hard, difficult conversations, because I got 120 folks in Sacramento in a beautiful building who need to hear from us and need to hear from us soon and have some difficult conversations with them. I am here to encourage you, invite you, entreat you to join us on Wednesday, May 29th. That's Wednesday, May 29th, for our very first Lutheran Lobby Day at the state capitol. So very quickly, those of you who have ever been to any lobby day anywhere, please raise your hand. Wonderful, I've just drafted you. I would like for you to see some of those people who have raised their hands, who have said that they've been to a lobby day, and let them tell you how much fun they are. Now, I'm into public policy. I think these things are a hoot, but even for people who are not policy wonks like myself, this is going to be a great opportunity for you to come to Sacramento, be at our offices. I will make sure that you are fully briefed on the issues that the Lutheran Office of Public Policy California is working on for this year. I'm hoping that it's the biennium. We're going to go over to the Capitol, we're going to talk to our legislators, and we're just going to let them know 4 things: that we're here, we're Lutheran, we vote, and we're Some people have wanted to know what we're going to be lobbying about, and the Policy Council has 3 issue priorities for the year. The first of them is water justice. Being here in California, that is our highway into the climate change, climate justice arena, and we're working strictly, particularly on water. We're also looking at immigration, migration issues. Wonderful that we've already begun the idea of working on those dialogues together. But the one that's nearest and dearest to my personal heart is that we are working on deep childhood poverty. The state of California is the largest subnational economy in the world. We are the fifth largest economy in the world. We also have the largest child poverty rate in the nation. There are more children living in poverty in the state of California than there are human beings living in the states of Montana, North and South Dakota combined. There are a suite of 17 bills that are under the heading End Child Poverty that are moving through the legislature at different levels, and so we'll know exactly what's moving on what date? Wednesday, May 29th. I see, you guys are getting it. And we're going to know what's moving at that exact moment, and we're going to go in and talk to our legislators and let them know that from our baptismal covenants, from the issues that we care about, from the Christ that we know and the way that we would like to move in the world, we want them to take a special look at these issues. So please, the registration deadline is next Friday. It is free. We're going to serve you lunch. All you have to do is get to Sacramento, and we'll take care of you from there. If you have any questions or concerns, I'll be here. I leave on Monday. And I happen to know that there are flights on Southwest and on Delta that are going into Sacramento that'll get you there on Tuesday. You'll be able to stay. We're saying that's about 4:30, so if you want to take a flight out, that's about 5:30, that'll work. And it'll just be a whole lot of fun. And if you have any questions or concerns, I'll be here. Just let me know how I can help you be there on what day? Wednesday, May 29th.
Thank you, Regina. Rachel Line.
Thank you, Bishop Andy Taylor. A couple of things. We have made it through Friday almost. I almost said Saturday. A couple of things. Just a reminder about Dinner Buddies. The sign-up sheets are still out there, so if you want to catch that on your way to worship, you can check into that. There is also the... I had some people asking about the Faith, Sexism, and Justice social statement. I had 20 available. These are kind of massive documents, so it's kind of a big deal to print out a lot of these. But these are online at a website, and I'm going to tell you that website 14 times, and hopefully it's going to be on the screen behind me as well. elca.org/women-and-justice. 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 If you're confused by the women and justice part, that was a previous title of this document. Yes, Pastor Augie. Oh, man.
She's only going to say it 4 times. She was exaggerating before that.
We have a minute-to-minute agenda we have to stick to. We are in this building. We are at Hope Lutheran Church in Palm Desert, if you didn't know that. We are so grateful to be here. I think this is the only church that is able to hold this size of a group. So we are so thankful that we've been able to impose on Hope Lutheran Palm Desert for 2 years in a row. They were gracious enough to let me beg them to come back this year. Pastor Derek, if you would come up here, and also I want to give a shout out to the incredible Hope Lutheran staff that has been around, some of the heavy lifters. We've got Raul and Wayne over here in this corner. They are some heavy lifters. They've been doing wonderful things. We have Pastor Gerald Sharon, who's here too. Hi. And then Pastor Rick Baylord was here earlier. Deborah has been overseeing all the volunteers that have been here, and Gabe is the office administrator who's been doing a lot of work. A lot of them have been here since 6 o'clock this morning, so we allowed some of them to go home. The other ones are tired. So thank you all for your work and for letting us take over your space to bring 400 people on your campus. We have a thank you card that was signed by the Synod Council, and then also a thank you gift from the Synod as well to say thank you for all that you've done for us. So thank you very much. Very nice. And next up, for transitioning into our worship time, I'm inviting Pastor Kindley Lund to give some worship information.
Okay, I'll try to keep this quick. On behalf of the Worship Planning Committee, I wanted to invite you all to worship in Hope Lutheran Sanctuary immediately following our dismissal here. In order to reflect our theme of opening our ears and listening for God, we decided to do worship in the style of Taizé. As a good Lutheran, you might be wondering, what does that mean? It means that it is a music-based service with simple and repetitive songs that are meant to be learned quickly in order to aid in contemplation and meditation. So this is different from probably most Lutheran services you have been to. A few notes on the service. 1, offering will be taken in plates that will be left by the exits, so not during the service. You can give offering on your way out. 2, we ask that you try to enter quietly, contemplatively, possibly in silence as you join the service. Number 3, we encourage you to listen to the music leaders throughout the service, especially for the beginning and ending of songs. And then lastly, we also encourage you to simply allow yourself during this service to rest in God and in the sounds of the service, and join us whenever the Spirit moves you in singing. And we hope you enjoy the service, and thank you.
And the service will begin at 4:30. We are on break until we have worship, and then after worship we will be on break until tomorrow morning. We start at 8 tomorrow morning, not 9, 8 a.m. Get here bright and early, and I'm glad I can hear that there's some reaction to that, so I'm glad I told you. Well, but we'll see you at worship in just a few minutes.